Prologue to the Squire's Tale. Squire, come near, if your will it be, and speak to us of love, for certainly you know thereof as much as any man. Nay, sir, said he, but I'll do what I can, with hearty will, for I will not rebel against your wishes, but a tale will tell. Hold me excused if I say aught amiss. My aim is good, and lo, my tale is this. Here begins the Squire's Tale. At Sarai, in the land of Tartary, there dwelt a king who warred on Russia he, whereby there died full many a doughty man. This noble king was known as Cambenscan, who in his time was of so great renown that there was nowhere in the wide world known so excellent a lord in everything. He lacked in naught belonging to a king. As for the faith to which he had been born, he kept its laws to which he had been sworn, and therewith he was hearty, rich, and wise, and merciful and just in all men's eyes, true to his word, benign and honorable, and in his heart like any centre stable, young, fresh, and strong, in warfare ambitious, as any bachelor knight of all his house. Of handsome person he was fortunate, and kept always so well his royal state, that there was nowhere that such another man. This noble king, this Tartar Cambenscan, had got 2 sons on Elfeta his wife, of whom the elder's name was Algersif, and that same second son was Cambelo. A daughter had this worthy king also, who was the youngest, and called Canance. But to describe to you all her beauty, it lies not in my tongue nor my knowing. I dare not undertake so high a thing. My English is quite insufficient for what must require a finished orator, who knew the colours needful to that art, if he were to describe her every part. I am none such, I must speak as I can. And so befell that, when this Cambenscan had 20 winters worn his diadem, as he was wont from year to year, I deem, he let the feast of his nativity, he cried throughout all Sarai his city, the last Idus of March, as 'twas that year. Phoebus the sun right festive was and clear, for he was near his exaltation grown, in face of Mars and in his mansion known. In Aries the choleric hot sign, right pleasant was the weather and benign, for which the wild birds in the sun's gold sheen, what of the season and the springing green, full loudly sang their love and their affection. It seemed that they had got themselves protection against the sword of winter keen and cold. This Cambenscan, of whom I have you told, high in the palace mounted on his throne, with crown and royal vestments sat alone, and held his feast so splendid and so rich, that in this world its like was not of which. If I should tell you all of the array, then would it occupy a summer's day. Besides, it needs not here that I apprise of every course the order of service. I will not tell you of their each strange sauce, nor of their swans, nor of their heronshaws. Moreover, in that land, as tell knights old, there are some foods which they for dainties hold, of which in this land the esteem is small. There is no man that can report them all. I will not so delay you for its prime, and all the fruit of this were loss of time. Unto my first theme I will have recourse. And so befell that, after the 3rd course, while this great king sat in his state that day, hearing his minstrels on their instruments play, before him at the board deliciously, in at the hall door, and all suddenly, there came a knight upon a steed of brass, holding in hand a mirror broad of glass. Upon his thumb he had a golden ring, and by his side a naked sword hanging, and up he rode right to the highest board. In all the hall there was not spoken word, for marvel of this knight, hold him to behold. They stared and stretched and craned, both young and old. This stranger knight, who came thus suddenly, armed at all points except his head richly, saluted king and queen, and those lords all, in order of rank, as they sat there in hall, showing such humble courtesy to each, in manner of behavior and in speech, that Gawain, with his old-time courtesy, though he were come again from Faery, could not have bettered him in any word. And after this, before the king's high board, he with a manly voice said his message, after the form in use in his language, without mistake in syllable or letter, and that his tale should seem to all the better, according to his language was his cheer, as men teach art of speech both there and here. Albeit that I cannot ape his style, nor can I climb across so high a stile, yet say I this, as to his broad intent, to this amounts the whole of what he meant. If so be that I have it yet in mind, he said, "the King of Araby and Ind, my liege lord, on this great and festive day, salutes you as he now best can and may, and sends to you in honor of your feast, by me that I am prepared for your behest, this steed of brass that easily and well can in one natural day, 'tis truth I tell, that is to say, in 24 hours, wherever you please, in drought or else in showers, bear you in body unto every place to which your heart wills that you go apace, without least hurt to you, through foul or fair, or if you please to fly as high in air, as does an eagle when he wills to soar, this selfsame steed will bear you evermore, without least harm till you have gained your quest, although you sleep upon his back or rest, and he'll return by twisting of a pin. He that made this could make full many a gin. He waited, watching many a constellation, before he did contrive this operation, and he knew many a magic seal and band. This mirror, too, which I have in my hand, has power such that in it men may see, when there shall happen any adversity, unto your realm and to yourself also, and openly who is your friend or foe. More than all this, if any lady bright has set her heart on any kind of wight, if he be false, she shall his treason see, his newer love and all his subtlety, so openly that nothing can he hide. Wherefore upon this pleasant summer tide, this mirror and this ring which you may see, he has sent to my lady Canance, your most surpassing daughter, who is here. The virtue of the ring, if you will hear, is this, that if she pleases it to wear upon her thumb or in her purse to bear, there is no bird that flies beneath the heaven, but she shall understand his language, even to know his meaning openly and plain, and answer him in his own words again. And every herb that grows upon a root, she shall know too, and whom 'twill heal to boot. Although his wounds be never so deep and wide, this naked sword that's hanging by my side, such virtue has that any man you smite, right through his armor will it carve and bite, were it as thick as is a branching oak, and that man who is wounded by its stroke shall never be whole until you please of grace to strike him with that flat in that same place, where he is hurt, which is to say 'tis plain, that you may with the flat sword blade fall again. Strike him upon the wound, and it will close. This is the truth I seek not to impose, for it shall fail not while it's in your hold. And when this knight had thus his message told, he rode out of the hall and did alight. His steed, which shone as sun does and as bright, stood in the courtyard still as any stone. This knight was to a chamber led anon, and was unarmed, and there at meat sat down. The gifts were brought and royally were shown, that is to say, the sword and glass of power, and borne anon onto the donjon tower. By certain officers detailed thereto, the ring to Canance was borne also, with ceremony, where she sat at table, but certainly it is no lie or fable. The horse of brass could no way be removed. It stood as it were glued to ground. 'Twas proved. There was no man could lead it out or drive, with any windlass that he might contrive. And why? Because they hadn't craft to heave it, and therefore in that place they had to leave it, until the knight had taught them the manner of moving it, or as you'll hereafter hear. Great was the press of people to and fro, swarming to see this horse that stood there so, for it so high was, and so broad and long, so well proportioned as to be most strong, just as it were a steed of Lombardy, therewith as horselike and as quick of eye, as if a gentle Apulian courser 'twere, for truly from his tail unto his ear, nature nor art could better nor amend, in any wise as people did contend. But evermore their greatest wonder was, how it could go, being made all of brass. It was a fairy, as the people seemed, and divers folk diversely of it deemed. So many heads, so many wits one sees, they buzzed and murmured like a swarm of bees, and played about it with their fantasy, recalling what they learned from poetry. Like Pegasus, it was mounted high, that horse which had great wings and so could fly, or else it was the horse of Greek Sinon, who brought Troy to destruction years agone. As men in these old histories may read, my heart, said one, is evermore in dread, I think some men-at-arms are hid therein, who have in mind this capital to win. It were right well that of such things we know. Another whispered to his fellows low, and said, He lies, for it is rather like some conjured up appearance of magic, which jugglers practice at these banquets great. Of sundry doubts like these they all did treat, as vulgar people chatter commonly, of all things that are made more cunningly than they can in their ignorance comprehend. They gladly judge they're made for some base end, and some much wondered on the mirror's power that had been borne up to the donjon tower, and how men in it such strange things could see. Another answered, saying it might be quite natural, by angles oddly spaced, and sly reflections thus within it placed, and said at Rome was such a one, men know. They spoke of Alhazen and Vitello, and Aristotle, who wrote in their lives on mirrors strange and on perspectives, as all they know who've read their published word. And other folk did wonder on the sword that had the power to pierce through anything, and so they spoke of Telephus the king, and of Achilles with his magic spear, wherewith he healed and hurt too, 'twould appear, even as a man might do with this new sword, of which but now I've told and you have heard. They spoke of tempering metal sundry wise, and medicines therewith which men devise, and how and when such steel should harden be, which nevertheless is all unknown to me. Then spoke they of fair Canaan's gold ring, and all men said that such a wondrous thing they'd ne'er heard of as being in ringcraft done, except that Moses and King Solomon had each a name for cunning in such art. Thus spoke the people, and then drew apart. But notwithstanding, some said that it was wondrous to make fern ashes into glass, since glass is nothing like the ash of fern. But since long since of this thing men did learn, therefore they ceased their gabble and their wonder, as sorely wonder some on cause of thunder, of ebb, of flood, of gossamer, of mist, and each thing till they know what cause exist. Thus did they chatter and judge and thus surmise, until the king did from the board arise. Phoebus had left the angle meridional, and yet ascending was that beast royal, the noble lion, with his Alderon, when that this Tartar king, this Cambiscan, rose from his board, where he had sat full high. Before him went the sounding minstrelsy, into a room hung with rich ornaments, wherein they sounded divers instruments, till it was like a heavenly thing to hear. And now danced merry Venus's children dear, for in the fish their lady sat on high, and looked upon them with a friendly eye. This noble king sat high upon his throne, and this strange knight was brought to him anon, and then to dance he went with canons. Here was such a revel and such jollity as no dull man is able to surmise. He must have known and served love's high emprise, and be a festive man as fresh as May. Who could for you describe such an array? Who could tell you the figures of the dances, so odd and strange, and the blithe countenances, the subtle glances and dissimulation, for fear of jealous persons' observation? No man but Launcelot, and he is dead. And therefore passed the joyous life they led, and saw no more. But in this jolliness I leave them till to supper all did press. The steward bade them serve the spices aye, and the rich wine through all this melody. The ushers and the squires got them gone. The spices and the wine were come anon. They ate and drank, and when this had an end, unto the temple as was right did wend. The service done, they supped while yet 'twas day. What needs it that I tell all their array? Each man knows well that at a kingly feast there's plenty for the greatest and the least, and dainties more than are in my knowing. Then after supper went this noble king to see the horse of brass, with all the rout of lords and ladies thronging him about. Such wondering was there on this horse of brass, that since the siege of Troy did overpass, when once a horse seemed marvellous to men, was there such wondering as happened then. But finally the king asked of this knight the virtue of this courser and the might, and prayed him tell the means of governance. This horse anon began to trip and dance, when this strange knight laid hand upon the rein, and said, Sir, there's no more I need explain, than when you wish to journey anywhere, you must not twirl a peg within his ear, which I will show you when alone with you. You must direct him to what place also. or to what country you may please to ride. And when you come to where you would abide, bid him descend and twirl another pin, for therein lies the secret of the gin. And he will then descend and do your will, and there he'll stand obedient and still. Though all the world and contrary had sworn, he shall not thence be drawn, nor thence borne. Or if you wish to bid him thence be gone, twirl but this pin, and he'll depart anon, and vanish utterly from all men's sight, and then return to you by day or night, when you shall please to call him back again, in such a fashion as I will explain. When we two are alone, and that full soon, ride when you choose, there's no more to be done. Instructed when the king was by that night, and when he'd established in his mind aright the method and the form of all this thing, then glad and blithe this noble doughty king repaired unto his revels as before. The bridle to the donjon tower they bore, and placed among his jewels rich and dear. How I know not, the horse did disappear. Out of their sight you get no more of me, but thus I leave in joy and jollity this Cambuscan with all his lords feasting, well nigh until the day began to spring. Explicit prima pars. Sequitur pars secunda. The nurse of good digestion, natural sleep, caused them to nod and bade them they take keep. That labor and much drinking must have rest, and with a gaping mouth all these he pressed, and said that it was time they laid them down, for blood was in the ascendant, as was shown, and nature's friend the blood must honored be. They thanked him, gaping all by two, by three, and every one began to go to rest. As sleep them bade, they took it for the best. But here their dream shall not by me be said. The fumes of wine had filled each person's head, which caused senseless dreams at any time. They slept next morning till the hour of prime. That is, the others, but not Canance. She was right temperate, as women be, for of her father had she taken leave, to go to rest soon after it was eve. For neither pale nor languid would she be, nor wear a weary look for men to see, but slept her first deep sleep, and then awoke, for so much joy upon her heart there broke, when she looked on the mirror and the ring, that 20 times she flushed and sleep did bring. So strong an impress had the mirror made, a vision of it to the slumbering maid. Wherefore ere up the sun began to glide, she called her mistress sleeping there betide, and said to her that she was pleased to rise. Old women like this governess are wise. Or often so, and she replied anon, and said, My lady, where will you be gone thus early, for the folk are all at rest? I will, said she, arise, for I have no zest for longer sleep, and I will walk about. Her mistress called a woman a great rout, and they rose up a dozen more or less, and up rose lovely Canaans to dress, as ruddy and bright as in the warm young sun, that in the ram now 4 degrees has run. He was no higher when she all was ready was, and forth she sauntered at an easy pace, arrayed according to the season sweet, lightly to play and walk on maiden feet, with 5 or 6 girls of her company. All down an alley through the park went she, the morning mist that rose from the damp earth reddened the sun and broadened it in girth. Nevertheless, it was so fair a sight that it made all their hearts dance for delight. What of the season and the fair morning, and all the myriad birds that she heard sing? For when she heard, she knew well what they meant, just by their songs, and learned all their intent. The point of every story, why it's told, if it's delayed till interest grow cold, in those who have perchance heard it before, the savor passes from it more and more, for fulsomeness or its prolixity, And for this reason, as it seems to me, I should to my tale's major point descend, and make of these girls walking a swift end. Amidst a dry dead tree, as white as chalk, as Canance was playing in her walk, there sat a falcon overhead full high, that in a pitiful voice began to cry, till all the wood resounded mournfully, for she had beaten herself so pitiably with both her wings that the red glistening blood ran down the tree trunk whereupon she stood, and ever in one same way she cried and shrieked, and with her beak her body she so pricked, that there's no tiger nor a cruel beast that dwells in open wood or deep forest would not have wept if ever weep he could. For pity of her she shrieked always, and so loud, for never yet has been a man alive, if but description I could well contrive. that heard of such a falcon for fairness, as well of plumage as of nobleness, of shape and all that reckoned up might be. A falcon peregrine she was, and she, seen from a foreign land, and as she stood, she fainted now and then for loss of blood, till almost she had fallen from the tree. This king's fair daughter, Princess Canance, who on her finger bore the magic ring, whereby she understood well everything that any bird might in its language say, and in such language could reply straightway. She understood well what this falcon said, and of her pity well nigh was she dead. So to the tree she went right hastily, and on this falcon looked she pitifully, and held her lap up wide, for she knew now the falcon must come falling from the bough, when next it swooned away from loss of blood, a long while waiting where the princess stood, till at the last she spoke in her clear voice, unto the hawk, as you'll hereafter hear. What is the cause, if it be one to tell, that you are in this furious pain of hell? Said Canance unto this hawk above. Is this for sorrow, or death, or loss of love? For as I think, these are the causes too, that torture gentle heart with greatest woe. Of other ills there is no need to speak, because such charm upon yourself you wreak, which proves right well that either love or dread must be the reason for your cruel deed, since I can see no one that gives you chase. For love of God, come, do yourself some grace, or say what thing may help, for west nor east have I before now seen a bird or beast that ever treated self so wretchedly. You slay me with your sorrow, verily. Such great compassion in my heart has grown, for God's dear love come from the dry tree down. And as I am a monarch's daughter true, if I but verily the real cause knew of your distress, if it lay in my might, I would make you amends before the night. As truly help me God of humankind, and even now will I look out and find some herbs to heal your hurts with speedily. Then shrieked this falcon the more piteously than ever, and to ground fell down anon, and lay there swooning, death-like as a stone, till Canance within her lap did take, and hold the bird till she began to wake. And when from out her fainting fit she made, all in her own hawk's language thus she said, that pity wells up soon in gentle heart, feeling its likeness in all pains that smart, is proved in day by day, as men may see, as well by deed as by authority. For gentle heart can spy out gentleness. I see well that you have on my distress. Compassion, my fair princess Canance, of truly womanly benignity, the nature in your heart your character has set. Not that I hope much good therefrom to get, but to obey the word of your heart free, and so that others may be warned by me. As by the whelp instructed is the lion, just for that cause and reason shall I fly on, while yet I have the leisure and the space, the story of my wrongs to you I'll trace. And ever while the one her sorrow said, the other wept, as she to watered fled, until the falcon bade her to be still, and with a sigh right thus she said her will. Where I was born, alas that cruel day, and fostered on a rock of marble gray, so tenderly that nothing troubled me, I knew not what it was adversity, till I could soar on high under the sky. There dwelt a handsome tercelet there hard by, who seemed the well of every nobleness, though he was full of treason and falseness. It was so hidden under humble bearing, and under hues of truth which he was wearing, and under kindness never used in vain, that no one could have dreamed that he could feign. So deeply ingrained were his colors dyed, but just as serpent under flower will hide, until he sees the time has come to bite. Just so this god of love, this hypocrite, with false humility for ever served, and seemed a wooer who the rites observed, that so become the gentleness of love, as of a tomb the fairness is above, while under is the corpse, such as you know. So was this hypocrite, cold and hot also, and in this wise he served his foul intent, that save the fiend, no one knew what he meant, till he so long had wept and had complained, and many a year in his service to me feigned, that my poor heart, a pitiful sacrifice, all ignorant of his supreme malice, fearing he'd die, as it then seemed to me, because of his great oaths and surety, granted him love on this condition known, that evermore my honor and renown were saved, both private fame and fame overt, that is to say, that after his desert I gave him all my heart and all my thought. God knows, and he, that more I gave him not, and took his heart in change for mine, for I. But true it is, and has been many a day, a true man and a thief think not at one. And when he saw the thing so far was gone, that I had fully granted him my love, in such a way as I've explained above, and given him my faithful heart as free as he swore he had given his to me. Anon this tiger, full of doubleness, fell on his knees, devout in humbleness, with so high reverence, and by his face, so like a lover in his gentle grace, so ravished, as it seemed, for very joy, that never Jason nor Paris of Troy, Jason? Nay, truly, nor another man, since Lamech lived, who was the first began, to love two women, those that right have sworn, not ever, since the primal man was born, could any man, by 20,000th part, enact the tricks of this deceiver's art. Nor were he worthy to unlace his shoe, where double dealing or deceit were due, nor could so think a person as he me. His manner was most heavenly to see, for any woman, were she ever so wise, so painted he and combed at point device. His manner all in every word, and so much by his bearing was I stirred, and for the truth I thought was in his heart, that if aught troubled him and made him smart, though ever so little be, and I knew this, it seemed to me I felt death's cruel kiss. And briefly, for all these matters went, my will became my own will's instrument. That is to say, my will obeyed his will, in everything in reason, good or ill, keeping within the bounds of honor ever. Never had I a thing so dear, never, as him, God knows, nor ever shall anew. This lasted longer than a year or two, while I supposed of him no thing but good, but finally thus at the last it stood, that fortune did decree that he must win, out of that place, that home, that I was in. Whether I felt woe, there's no question, none. I can't describe my feelings, no, not one. But one thing dare I tell, and that boldly, I came to know the pain of death thereby. Such grief I felt for him, none might believe. So on a day of me he took his leave, so sorrowfully too, I thought truly, that he felt even as deep as woe as I, when I had heard him speak and saw his hue. Nevertheless I thought he was so true, and that to me he would come back again, within a little while, let me explain. And 'twas quite reasonable that he must go, for honour's sake, for oft it happened so, that I made virtue of necessity, and took it well because it had to be. A look of cheer I felt not I put on, and took his hand, I swear it by St. John, and said to him, Behold, I'm yours in all, be you to me as I have been and shall. What he replied it needs not I rehearse. Who can say better than he who can do worse? When he had well said, all his good was done. It well behoves him take a lengthy spoon, who eats with devils, so I've heard folk say. So at the last he must be on his way, and forth he flew to where it pleased him best, when it became his purpose he should rest. I think he must have had this text in mind, that everything returning to its kind gladdens itself. Thus men say, as I guess, men love and naturally newfangledness, as do these birds that men in cages feed, for though you night and day take of them heed, and fairly strew their cages soft as silk, and give them sugar, honey, bread, and milk, yet on the instant when the door is up, they with their feet will spurn their feeding cup, and to the wood will fly, and worms will eat. So are they all newfangled of their meat, and love all novelties of their own kind, nor nobleness of blood may ever bind. So fared this tercelet, oh, alas the day, though he was gently born and fresh and gay, and handsome and well-mannered, aye, and free. He saw a kite fly, and it proved a she, and suddenly he loved this she-kite so, that all his love for me did quickly go, and all his truth turned falsehood in this wise. Thus has this kite my love in her service, and I am lovelorn without remedy. And with that word the hawk began to cry, and after swooned on Canance's fair arm. Great was the sorrow for the falcon's harm, that Canance and all her women made. They knew not how they might this falcon aid. But Canance home bore her in her lap, and softly her in poultices did wrap, where she with her own beak had hurt herself. Now Canance dug herbs more rich than pelf out of the ground, and made up ointments new of precious herbs, all beautiful of hue, wherewith to heal this hawk from day to night, She nursed her carefully with all her might, and by her bed's head she contrived a mew, and lined the cage with velvet's olive blue, symbol of truth that is in women seen, and all without the mew was painted green. And there were painted all these treacherous fowls, as are these titmice, tercelites, and these owls, while for despite were painted there beside magpies, that they might cry at them and chide. Thus leave I Canance her hawk keeping. I will no more just now speak of her ring, till I come back with purpose to explain how this poor falcon got her love again, repentant as the story tells to us, by meditation of that Cambalus, the king's son, of whom I've already told, but henceforth I a straitened course will hold, great battles and adventures to relate, whereof were never heard such marvels great. First will I tell you of King Caminscan, who won so many a town and many a man. And after will I speak of Algarsife, how he won Theodora for his wife, for whom full often peril great he was, had he been helped not by the steed of brass. And after that I'll speak of Cambalo, who in the lists fought with the brothers two for Canance before he could her win. And where I left off I'll again begin. Explicit secunda pars, incipit pars tertia. Apollo in his chariot whirled so high, that in the god Mercury's house the sly. Unfinished. Here follows the words of the franklin to the squire, and the words to the host to the franklin. In faith, Sir Squire, you have done well with it, and openly I praise you for your wit, the franklin said. Considering your youth, so feelingly you speak, sir, in good truth. In my opinion there is none that's here, and eloquence shall ever be your peer. If you but live, may God give you good chance, and in all virtue send continuance. For, sir, your speech was great delight to me. I have a son, and by the Trinity, I'd rather have than 20 pounds in land, though it were right now fall into my hand. He were a man of such discretion shown, as you, sir, fie on what a man may own, unless the man have virtue therewithal. I've checked my son, and yet again I shall, for he toward virtue chooses not to wend, but just to play at dice and gold to spend, and lose all that he has in his usage, and he would rather talk with any page, than to commune with any gentle wight, from whom he might learn courtesy aright. A straw for courtesy, exclaimed our host. What, Franklin? God, sir, well you know, I trust, that each of you must tell us at the least a tale or two, or break his sworn behest. I know it, said the franklin. I am fain, and pray you all you do not me disdain. Though to this man I speak a word or two. Come, tell your tale, sir, without more ado. Gladly, sir host, said he, I will obey your will, good host. Now hearken what I say, for I'll not be contrary in any wise, at least as far as my wit shall suffice. I pray to God that it may please you, rough though it may be, I'll know 'tis good enough.